Uh, hello again. Just in case this turns out to be a very interesting conversation, I decided to record it as well, but we may not
Yes.
use it in case. Just to sum it up, I was talking about the essay written by Charlie Munger that's called Practical Thought About Practical Thought. The subtitle to it is Turning $2 million to $2 trillion. And I was mesmerized by the way how Charlie Munger uses multiple model analysis of Coca-Cola and uses that as the basis for his investment decisions. And Florian convinced me to start the meeting over because he has a lengthy answer to that, and I'm really looking forward to what he has to say, because this is the conversation I want to have for the past 12 years, roughly.
Yeah, we can definitely have a separate video for that, what we're going to talk, because now we're going to talk about this specific essay of Charlie Munger. And first off, this essay, if I'm correct, is a lot about psychology. There is mental models, but a lot of the aspects are the aspects that are usually neglected by the rest of the Wall Street analysts, which are, as I said, the psychological dimension, the crowd psychology, more specifically, how things will evolve, because we have a very deep understanding of the fundamental human nature. And that's exactly what I call deep qualitative investigation. We dig deeper into the aspects that are hardly quantifiable in numbers. And this is exactly what Charlie Munger did in this essay. He showed how to dig deep in a company, but on the psychological aspect and on the competitive strategy aspect. And there is, if I'm correct, I don't think there is any number, or maybe very little number. The big chunk of this essay, and maybe 80%, is a logical analysis about the human aspects of the company. And this is something, of course, that is very different from the majority of what we can find online. Either it's like investment books that look that most of these books, they focus into quant, like PE numbers, price over earnings ratio, and they say you should buy when it's that number or this other number. But fundamentally, why? Because, as he said in the very essay, he said that Wall Street know nothing about human psychology, and they are not even interested. He even say the psychological department of university are the most undervalued in the university, because they don't apply it in the right thing, and Wall Street doesn't want to dig into it, and that leads to a fundamental truth for me, that interdisciplinary is an edge in itself, because so few people are capable of crossing fields that are so different, like numbers on one side, financial numbers, and psychology, human psychology. You will see very, very, very little people, especially investors and traders, who are really digging in deep into the psychology, and the reverse, the psychologic professional experts, whoever has deep knowledge about psychology and crowd psychology, they are not that much digging deep into the investment universe. So the intersection of both worlds, this is where live Charlie Munger, this is where we both live. But this tiny intersection is very, very tiny. There is very little people who are interested by both these aspects. So that's why we like when we see each other, we recognize each other, because not a lot of people are interested in this. And that's the same as Warren Buffett. Even if Warren Buffett is a celebrity, and with his partner Charlie, it's still, even in the whole investment world, and even after making hundreds of, if not trillions of money, of dollars, so many people are like, yeah, it's not for me, because they don't want to be knowledgeable about these several aspects. And we're talking about just two aspects. If now you put history, if now you put law, if you put any of the subject, like any of a relevant subject to what you want to do, you have even less people who are interested in that. Because, by the way, as you know, Charlie Munger was a lawyer initially. So that's another big aspect, another big dimension about, even if it doesn't talk too much about this aspect. But you do have people who have very deep knowledge about very different fields, And this is the intersection of this knowledge that becomes valuable on the market when you do have not a lot of people wanting to do that. And that's why you loved it, and at the same time not a lot of people are doing this, because we are kind of pioneers. We have kind of an empty field, because not many people are fundamentally, I would say, like people who are knowledgeable about numbers, kind of math nerds, if I can say, the quants, they are usually requiring skills that are human skills that are very different from basic psychology of understanding even the most simple humans. So even if everyone knows that it's possible and there is books on both of these science, the one who are good in one side are not interested to learn the other side, and the one who are good in psychology are not interested to learn investment. So that I would say, if you want to build a media out of it, or at least if you want to build something out of it, or write things online or make content online, this is something you have to keep in mind. It's not to say you should not do it, but quite the contrary. You should not write for the majority, because it's never going to be a majority in these fields. You should write for a tiny number of people, and you should also define what your own goals with this website, blogs, and whatever you want to do. And my use of this, it's essentially for network, to connect with other people, but everyone might have another objective. And I do think it's important to clarify what's your goal and plan before even doing something. And I think that might be something that you want to decide for yourself before committing to something without being not yet sure where you want to go later. So,
well, I read, I don't know if I read it somewhere or if it was an interview with Charlie Munger, where he said, I remember now. It was a video interview on YouTube where I think it was at the end of the Daily Journal Corporation annual meeting in 2017. If you remember, after that, all the groupies, the attendees, walked over to the table where Charlie was, and they just asked him freely questions for about 2 hours. And they also stumbled across this essay on Coca-Cola, the turning 2 million to 2 trillion. And he said it was a huge failure, that nobody understood that talk. Even people who are incredibly intelligent and read it afterwards, one word at a time, twice, they couldn't understand what it's about. And I thought, wow, if my blog fits into that basically my blog would be about explaining this essay and similar essays I'm going to write. So it's not so much about creating those essays, but about explaining them. So I would be selling transformation. I would be selling the teaching part of it, not just the creation, because it's difficult to make so many analyses yourself. So I might take an analysis done by Charlie Munger or Monish Pabrai or someone else, and just try to explain it in other words. So if that would be where my blog would fit, I think it could be top quality content for people who want to invest, and at the same time they just don't buy this quantitative investing thing, because it's a like you said, I bought the book. It's not a very well-known book. It's called A Few Lessons for Investors and Managers, written by Warren Buffett. It has about, I don't know, 100 pages. It's really thin, right? And one of the chapters he talks about there is all these various financial ratios, for example, PE ratio and book value to something else ratio. And he talks about how all these ratios are misleading. And the only ratio that he himself uses is how much money you need to put in to the business compared to how much you can take out from the moment you invest. So that's very interesting, because what he says, that if you have a company that wasn't really successful in the past year and lost a lot of money, all of those financial ratios are going to look really horrible, terrible, like high debt and so on. And he says, well, that doesn't really matter. What you want to know is how much money you need to put into that business starting today and how much you can get out. So in many cases, you want a company that has made bad decisions in the past, which destroyed its share price, and you don't care what was before that, before you bought it. And that's very, very interesting, because what he's using is basically, you can say, profit to capital expenditure. If I was forced to put it in numbers, right? That's what you want, the profit to shareholders compared to capital expenditure. So the company I bought, as you asked me earlier, is a company that made a huge investment in infrastructure. That was the reason why it went public, to fund this infrastructure investment. And all the numbers, all the financial ratios look horrible because it's building the infrastructure, and the infrastructure project is supposed to end this month after years of construction, and then it would just keep making money with very little maintenance costs. So I bought a company that has very horrible numbers up to this point, and from this point onwards, it should have the better numbers. And obviously, you know, it's difficult to talk about this on YouTube, because it might be that I made a mistake in my analysis and all this goes to waste, and I would make a fool of myself. But for example, the dividend payout ratio is roughly 7%, which is very high for companies. So, and that dividend is payable in, I think, 3 weeks. So that's some cash you're getting. So yeah, if that company was not paying out dividends, you would say this is all speculation. But when you see that they actually give you 1/15 of your investment each year, then it's just, you know, cash in hand that you get. Obviously, there's another discussion where, you know, the dividend is taxable, so I get it after tax, and what I'm going to do with it, I'm going to buy more stock with it. So you know, I'm just losing money each year on the tax. But what I'm saying is that I'm using this as sort of a yardstick to show that the company is actually making money and is able and willing to distribute it to shareholders. And 7% is quite a lot. And it's also in China, and denominated in Hong Kong dollars, which have about 2% inflation. So in my country, in Prague, we have 13% inflation. So I'm making 11% just on this exchange ratio. You know, on the theory that the inflation is going to worsen the exchange rate between our currency and Hong Kong currency. So inflation in itself does not play that role. I'm saying that inflation causes the exchange rate to change. So I might make 11% just on having my money in a different currency. That's what I'm trying to convey. And it's not going to be exactly 11%, but it's going to be somewhere around the figure. So yeah, that's it. And obviously the investment I made was made on these qualitative factors. It was, I made a qualitative decision on that was very similar to that Coca-Cola essay by Charlie Munger. Except that in my case, it involved very little psychology because it wasn't a consumer product, right? The Coca-Cola is retail, it's for customers, it sells in grocery stores. So you need a huge amount of psychology of how buyers in the grocery market behave, because you're selling to those. But the company I bought is not selling to people in a grocery store, so it needed a different set of mental models. So as you said before, that there are many people in psychology departments who do not want to learn about investing, and vice versa. They don't really have to. If they pick a company in a business where it doesn't sell to the end customer, the psychology of individual humans may not play such a large role. You may pick a company that sells to a government, and governments decide on different mental models than individual buyers in a market, in a supermarket, right? So if you don't like the psychology part, you can choose a field or a company that doesn't rely on those models as much. So that's doable. But obviously Coca-Cola does, or Disney
when
does.